All right, Tanya, share summary week 4 out of 55 of Miras Hashem, and we're doing Prakim Tes Yud and Yud Aleph. So before we were talking about the notion of bad Averis, what they mean for a person. Now we're going to start discussing. We mentioned in Parak Aleph the idea of different levels that exist, and right before that we have Parak Tes, almost like finishing off Parak Ches and bringing us into Parak Yud. It says that the Nefesh HaBahamis, the animalistic soul, mainly lives in the heart. That is to say, mainly it does things with emotions, trying to get you excited and things like that. Whereas the Nefesh HaLekis is less passionate. It's in the brain. And in a sense, each one is trying to conquer the territory of the other one. The Nefesh HaBahamis is trying to get into your head, that your intellectual faculty should be involved in doing Averis, and the Nefesh HaLekis is trying to get into the heart, that the heart should be excited about godliness, but that's where each one mainly is. Usually desires are more worldly, and decisions are more godly, because usually excitement is impulsive. They almost go hand in hand. And if you would say, like, doing the right thing, quote unquote, is usually something that requires rationality instead of just following your heart. Sometimes it could lead in the same place, but that's how it goes. The Nefesh HaBahamis, to note, isn't inherently bad, and is actually going to touch on that at the end. So I'll just the end of this chapter. So we'll leave that for when it comes to Miras Hashem. But essentially, yeah, each one is also trying to acquire the rights for the levushim that we were talking about before, for the thoughts, speeches, and actions that a person does. Essentially, that's the main real estate, more than like the place where they live, the heart or the brain. More than conquering that, that's really the main prize, is to get a hold of the thought, the speech, and the action of a person. The Alter Rebbe elaborates on this theme of which midos are taken over and what levushim are taken over, etc. It's very interesting, but not really something that you would say belongs in a summary per se. I mean, maybe, but I don't personally think so. So just he elaborates on those themes over there, and then at the end he makes a very important point, which is that the Nefesh HaBahamis isn't inherently bad, and the Nefesh HaBahamis is actually trying to do what Hashem wants, what Hashem created it for. What it should do is to get a person excited about mundane things. It does its job pretty well, at least in my experience, and that's what it's trying to do is really what Hashem wants, but what Hashem made it to do is not to get a person excited about godliness, but rather to try to take over the person in this way. So now we start getting into Parak Yud, and we start explaining the levels which we referenced in Parak Aleph, about how, like, you have a tzaddik v'tevle, a tzaddik v'rale, Rosh v'tevle, Rosh v'rale, and a Beinoni. I'm going to actually go through it kind of in that order. So in Parak Yud, we say when a person is really successful in conquering his Yetzer Hara to the point that now his Yetzer Hara is completely subdued. That is to say, not that his Yetzer Hara is fighting a little bit, but that his Yetzer Hara is just completely knocked out. His Nefesh HaBahamis is completely, the reins are given over to the Nefesh HaLekis. The Nefesh HaLekis essentially won the war permanently. So that is what we call tzaddik virale. Now, why do you say virale? As long as the Nefesh HaBahamis is still in existence, the tzaddik is always going to be virale, because there's still going to be a part of him that isn't, inherently against worldly matters. It's not completely given over to godliness. He has a part of him, or she has a part of her, or they have a part of them that is completely, like, it's still involved. It's still in the takif. They're not completely given over to godliness. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. So I'll say that the person is a Rasha, the complete opposite. They're actually a tzaddik. But it's still that they're not completely. So that's why they say Rale, that they have, like, really they're a tzaddik, but they have Rale. It's almost like it's something secondary to them. It's something that it's in their possession. If a person would be completely given over, or a person would have, that they have no bad within them, they'd be a tzaddik v'tevle, that everything that they have is good. And the way that, like, the sign of that would be if a person is so completely disgusted by the notion of doing an Avera. They say, I think, about maybe Menachem Mendel of Kotzk, but I could be completely getting that wrong. But one of the Talmidei Baal Shem, or of the Magid. But they say about him that there was once that he was forced to see a woman dressed natsniously, and he vomited. I could be messing up who it is. I feel like I'm messing up who it is, but maybe I'll edit this in if I find it after, or something. But he was so disgusted by seeing someone that's like something like that. It's like such a foreign taiva to him almost, that like he literally vomited. So, and it's not to say that he's like, I mean, he's not doing it like as a fake. This is really what he was. His nefesh Bahamas was so gone that to him the idea of like it wasn't just like the woman, it was the fact that she was dressed in that way, like to try provocatively, and that disgusted him so much that he vomited. So, just to like clarify, in a certain sense, when you have hatred, or hopefully you don't have hatred, but when a person has hatred, usually the hatred, it goes deeper than whatever it is. Like, let's say, I don't know, Reuven hates Shimon. It's usually not that Reuven is so essentially disgusted by Shimon, but there's something that Shimon has, and that's the thing that disgusts Reuven. Like, let's say, I don't know, Shimon is stingy. It's usually not that Reuven is disgusted by the essence of Shimon. It's usually, okay, he's disgusted by his stinginess. If you wanted to give a different example from last week's parsha, that Yaakov cursed the anger of Shimon and Levi, and he wouldn't curse his children, chas v'shalom, but it was the thing that they had that he really didn't like, their anger, so that he cursed. So it's important to understand that the hatred is not necessarily it's not necessarily towards a whole thing. Hatred is very selective, but very often people generalize it. So the idea is that if a person really doesn't like something, that in itself is hatred. Now, to note, usually you would say that the opposite of love would be something like apathy, that you have no feelings towards it. This hatred isn't a hatred of a negative feeling, which usually when you use hatred, you're saying, oh, I want to fight against it, or whatever it is. Over here, it's not particularly that. It's saying, I have such a lack of connection to this thing that is so foreign to me that it feels pasha just like the antithesis of who I am. Now, I don't relate to this per se, because I'm not a tzaddik v'tevlei. I have my taivas, but the point is that that's where this hatred is coming from. It's important to appreciate it. I think it's like a core concept. This is why a tzaddik v'tevlei hates bad. It's so foreign. A tzaddik v'ralei is still a tzaddik. He's still doing everything perfect, and there's not a chance of the nefesh Bahamas rising up against him. There's not a chance of the Yetzer Hara taking over for even a split second, not even in potential. But he's not disgusted because he still has that relation. It's still a part of him, or her, or them. So it's important. This is the distinction between the tzaddik v'tevlei and the tzaddik v'ralei. So then the Alter Rebbe goes and he says a concept, which is kind of like explaining why are we making this divide? What's the actual difference between a tzaddik v'tevlei and a tzaddik v'ralei besides for this point? Like, what's the nafkamina? What's the takeaway? So he says that tzaddik v'tevlei, they're called, or tzaddikim v'tevlahem, if you will, they're called bnei aliyah, which literally means the children of the upper residence, or something like that. What this means, he says, there's two explanations, and they actually go hand in hand, like two translations almost. One of them is that they elevate everything in the world. Because they're not involved, when they do a mitzvah, or whatever it is that they're involved with in the world, it's purely for the sake of elevation. There's nothing external that's in it for them. Even a tzaddik v'ralei, that they enjoy things in the world. It's not that the nefesh Bahamas has no chance of winning any battle. There's not a chance of an avera occurring. Definitely not intentionally. And there's a concept in the Gemara Pasha that we learn halachis from, that tzaddikim, the actual tzaddikim, verified, I don't know, blue check on Twitter, however verified, but verified tzaddikim, there's not a chance of them doing avera, to the point that if they did something, then you know for a fact that it's not an avera. Who's the tzaddik like this in the Gemara? I don't know, but this is a concept that's expressed in the Gemara and in a few places. It says even the animals of tzaddikim, they can't do an avera. So tzaddikim for sure can't do an avera. So even though they can't do an avera, but they're still involved in the world. They still have what to do with it, and therefore when they do something, even though all Yidden, when they do things, it's for the sake of elevation, for refining the world, etc. But when a tzaddik v'tevlei does it, this is the entirety of what he's doing, or what they're doing. And the second point is that when the tzaddik v'tevlei is doing something, he's doing it purely, or they're doing it purely for Hashem. Hashem being like who they're in a sense close to, and that's what it says is chasen kandile, that who is called a chassid, someone that does good with his acquirer, with his I don't know, nest, place of residence. Essentially, that they're with Hashem. They're not, when they're doing a mitzvah, they're not doing it to connect to Hashem. They're, in a sense, they're already there, but rather it's purely for Hashem's sake. more so than a tzaddik virale could even hope to accomplish, because, could hope to accomplish maybe, but more than what a tzaddik virale is accomplishing, because a tzaddik virale is in a level where they're still involved, even though they're doing it for the best reasons, but they get something out of it. They're still connected to down here. So that's in a sense the distinction between the tzaddik v'tevle and the tzaddik virale, and that's what Parak Yud is about. Then on to Parak Yud Aleph, the Alter Rebbe explains the opposite, and he says that this is also similarly the difference between a Rosh v'tevle and a Rosh virale. A Rosh v'tevle is someone that they might do Averis, they have a shaykhis to Averis, they still have, as in their Nefesh Bahamas is winning, they still have a Nefesh Alikis. The Nefesh Alikis is screaming and shouting, whatever. It's not to say that they have no chance of doing a mitzvah, because mitzvahs happen. Even Rishayim are filled with mitzvahs. But ultimately, that the bad is in control, and they still have a tshuva and things like that. So, in a certain sense, it's uneven. That the tzaddik virale, you would think it should be like the exact opposite of the Rosh v'tevle, but it's actually not like that, because when we say tzaddik virale, we're saying that he's a tzaddik. He's really a tzaddik that's perfect, and he still has bad, or she still has bad, or they still have bad. The Rasha v'tevle, it's not exactly, they need to be, a Rasha, but being a Rasha is almost, in a sense, it's not that high of a target to get to, or it's not that difficult of a target to get to. That being a Rasha means that the Yetzer Hara has some level of control that's being exerted. So even if a person does an Avera, then they forget about it. But in a certain sense, until they do tshuva, there's still that effect of the Avera. The Avera is pulling them down in some way, shape, or form. Like it says that if a person does an Avera a few times, it becomes like it's mutter for them. Not that it actually is mutter for them, but in their mind, it becomes like a permissible kind of thing to be doing. So as long as the Yetzer Hara has that, they have that kind of effect that they're winning over to a certain degree. They're winning over something, and that makes them a Rasha. Now the Tevle part is still definitely Tevle, but it's not that the Rasha and the Tzaddik are exact opposites. A Tzaddik is someone that bad isn't relevant to them. It's something that only like in the theoretical, but it's completely conquered. A Rasha is saying anyone that has that connection to bad. So a Rasha and a Tzaddik, you would almost say, aren't actually exact opposites, but in a certain sense, they do kind of balance the plane. That a Beinoni is going to be Parak Yud, it's going to be next week in Miras Hashem, but a tzaddik v'tevle is someone that's only does good, but has that connection to bad. And then a Rasha v'tevle is someone that has a consistent connection to bad, but they still have good in them that expresses itself even if it's all the time. And also to a certain extent, the tzaddik virale could be said to be that way, that they still have a lot of connection to the world and to bad in general, even though they're not doing it at all. But as far as practical action, you can have a Rasha v'tevle that's a very, very, starker person in a sense, and a tzaddik virale that they're virtually indistinguishable. They could even be indistinguishable in their thought, speech, and action, but the Rasha v'tevle still has that they haven't done tshuva properly, and the Avera still has an effect on them, or things like that. So that's a Rasha v'tevle. A Rasha virale is someone that's really almost, you would say, the exact opposite of a tzaddik v'tevle. Rasha virale is someone that has absolutely no good, and whatever good they have is something that hovers outside of them externally, that it's been completely exiled from them, only to look on in terror. Someone that doesn't even have hiruri tshuva, they don't even, they never even contemplate tshuva. Whatever mitzvahs they would do is completely unintentional, and even perhaps they don't intentionally do any of it. They might even have intention to not do mitzvahs. That's what a Rasha virale is. Someone that, if I had to sum up a Rasha virale, I would say someone that doesn't have any regrets at all whatsoever, doesn't have any thoughts of doing tshuva whatsoever, and this is that the bad that's within them, it won, and whatever good is that they have it, but it's not inside of them. It's not having any effect on them whatsoever. So yeah, that has been the summary, and Miras Hashem, we'll get to the main thing, the goal to strive to, the Beinoni, and we'll try to figure out how you can have a Beinoni somewhere in between the Rasha v'tevle and the tzaddik virale. You have Beinoni, a very niche, a fascinating concept, that you can have someone that exists over there walking the plank.